Welcome to the Building Web3 podcast. Today I have two amazing co-founders. I have Max, the co-founder of YONA, and I've got Joanna, I'm the co-founder of Soon. Guys, could you give a brief introduction into yourself and what each of your respective companies does? And I'll start with Joanna.
Okay, sure. Hi, guys. My name is Joanna. I'm the co-founder CEO of Soon. We are the most efficient roll-up stack powered by decoupled SVM. And we also have a stack that allows folks to use interoperability cross-chain, especially within the Soon universe, all the app chains, and two major L1s, that's Solana and Tom. Myself, brief introduction. So I am ex Coinbase, ex OP, ex Aleo, and now at Soon.
Absolutely. Max?
Yeah, and my name is Max. I'm one of the co-founders of YONA Network. So we are building real-time performance blockchain powered by Solana Virtual Machine and settling on Bitcoin. That's pretty much it.
Now, Joanna, I have to ask you because you left the OP universe, so obviously you found some kind of fault with the super chain. Talk to us a little bit about why you ended up moving over and why Solana.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it fault, but definitely have seen some opportunities, for us to reinvent the stack. So yeah, as I mentioned, when I was at OP, I was in BD, so also saw the launch of OP Stack, and at the time was base chain getting launched as the first POC chain. So there's a lot of interesting playbook that got introduced from that concept, including just making it very easy for people to fork it, and a lot of these one now is like 150 OP stack chains I just counted, and a lot of them are actually general purpose chains. So it's interesting that within like 3 years since the OP stack launched this, there's a lot of fragmentation of liquidity, and we saw that the OP mainnet, right, their own general purpose chains being challenged by some of these forked, OP stack chains. So to me, that's a bit of counterintuitive because number one, the idea of a stack is to enable new use cases that couldn't be done on the existing chain. And then number two is we didn't really see like the real like proliferation of app chains. There's still a lot of app chains. Candidates I talk to are quite frustrated by the low latency, the low latency and the high block time, right? So those are all technical difficulties that are bottlenecked by the EVM tech stack. So yeah, so when I started looking into SVM, that became a clear answer for it. We can actually enable this, decentralized AI and on-chain gaming, actually taking off with 400 milliseconds, or in our case, actually 50 milliseconds block time versus 2 seconds on OP stack. In addition to, as I mentioned, the builder culture that we saw on the Ethereum side, just a lot of fragmentation of liquidity, fragmentation of the devs.
Absolutely. And Max, I'll toss this over to you. For people that are unfamiliar with the term SVM, talk to them a little bit about what that means and kind of how Solana's approach is a bit different than the L2 approach that we see in Ethereum land.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, SVM stands for Solana Virtual Machine in the same way like EVM, originally was a part of Ethereum stack only, but became super popular. And the same is true for Solana these days. So we see a number of chains also using these tech stack, and it means that any program that was developed for Solana and deployed on Solana, on-chain program can be also deployed on one of these networks without any modifications. And well, this is super convenient for developers. So you don't have to develop the programs from scratch. So you're just reusing what you had on Solana. And from technical perspective, it's pretty different from EVM. And well, EVM has a lot of different implementations these days. But when we compare it to the most widespread, like Ethereum's, Optimisms, and so on, so SVM enables parallel execution, which makes it like way more performant. So I think Solana these days is around like 3,000 transaction per second. And well, this is not a limit. And like our team also works on implementing real-time SVM, which means you're getting response from. So it's like not only about TPS, but about the time to finality. So you get the response from your network and it's immediately final. So in the same way you are interacting with any like Web2 service. Solana also has difference in terms of like non-technical kind of the way the whole ecosystem is organized. So Ethereum took this important decision like several years ago that their way to scale would be L2s. So like we see a number of L2s, a lot of L2s these days around Ethereum, and there's a lot of criticism these days, particularly these L2s are fragmenting liquidities, they are parasitic, and so on. And Solana's approach is very different, and it's all about like network extensions. So still to be figured out what it means exactly, to be honest, because there are a lot of projects and they're like borderline between like, is this like a full-on L2 or is it still like network extension? But the idea is the way to scale Solana is not to create a bunch of L2s that are exactly the same as an L1, but they are more centralized, and that's why they can they are cheaper and so on. So the narrative is very different, but still there is space even in the world of Solana for these like L2s / network extensions, because the design space is different. Like app chains, as Joanna correctly mentioned, like app chain, you have to have something like an L2 and a technical stack for implementing that.
Yeah, and just real quick, so if people are unfamiliar or a bit lost in the conversation, we'll talk about some of the things that happened on Ethereum. So, gas fees were really high, block speeds were too slow. So essentially people split out into L2s, and then a very easy way to deploy L2s, you've got like different stacks. You've got like the OP stack, where you could do something like Gelato, one click, you should be able to stand up a new chain. So the way they scaled it was just splitting out a bunch of new chains that then roll up into the main chain of Ethereum. And then Solana's approach, what has been relatively different? Talk to us a little bit. Is it that they use this SVM to be like pseudo app chains that are running in parallel to the main blockchain and then eventually settle their state back? How does it generally work?
Yeah. I can give my take, and Max, feel free. I think the whole network extension is actually not so much of a scaling solution, right? Like we saw on Ethereum. So the EVM evolution has taken a very different path from what we saw on the SVM side. So the SVM side, you have this the sort of the power engine, right, of Solana, which is the underlying parallel execution layer. That's the SVM, Solana Virtual Machine. And the settlement layer can be either on Solana, which will be a Solana L2, right, or quote unquote the scaling solution for Solana, or it can be on a different chain. So in our case, we're starting with Ethereum, just because that's where we see majority of the users and the liquidity is, and also where we see kind of most of the fragmentation of the liquidity is happening. So we use this first principle approach to, instead of trying to fix something that's quote unquote broken, maybe like some of the parallel EVM folks are doing. No offense, we are looking at, how do we bring SVM top performance and the builder culture, as I mentioned earlier, into the other ecosystem. So the whole idea is, because we're seeing a lot more, high quality developers that stay through the cycles, that stay loyal to the networks, and continue to innovate, almost using kind of Solana as an innovation hub and continue to come up with new use cases. We want to see that kind of builder culture in other ecosystem, because we all know like we need more developers than what we saw so far on Solana, right? We have a lot more developer actually, quite not even at the same magnitude on the Ethereum side. So we wanted to bring this gold standard to the Ethereum world. And by doing so, we basically, kind of take away that grand farmer culture that I mentioned, where people just copy and paste their applications and hop around. So the way that we've been doing is because we are developing, the only team that's developing the SVM stack. So we'll have a license approach where it's governance voting based. So we will have some control when it comes to which team will get to, be hand over this gift of SVM to build their own SVM rollup onto their ecosystem. And we start with Ethereum. We might go to TON next. But yeah, we might, but the point is we only see one general purpose chain in one ecosystem. Of course, there's other application chains surrounding it, but that's for different purposes and would not be a competition.
And I wanted to definitely come to kind of a root confusion that I think most of listeners may encounter, where they'll be like, wait, Solana with Ethereum and then Solana with Bitcoin. Talk to us a little bit about like how this is all working, and so that they're not completely confused, like, wait, EVM, but Bitcoin, but now we're talking about Solana. Talk to us a little bit about how these like actually tie together.
Sure. Yeah. So from our perspective, we use OP stack to link L1 and L2. So on the L2 side, right, we're still like the execution layer is still the Solana Virtual Machine, right? Solana is the execution layer, and then settlement layer will be Ethereum. So we're using quite minimum code diff from the OP stack, because that's something that has been battle tested. We've seen, very much the best auditors have already done so, and there's a lot of traffic going through this. So the main thing that we spend a lot of engineering effort is actually the mini TPU and scheduler that's consists of the decouple SVM. So we made a lot of improvement on top of what Anza team, that's the Solana dev shop that got spun out from the labs. So they released something in June that Max, my team and other teams have been kind of used as a reference point to further, improve on top of that to make it more of a real roll-up use case for SVM. So far, we are not copying all the mainnet, Solana mainnet's voting threads from the existing chain. So that gave us more improvement on the TPS, that gave us the ability to add fraud proof, and we're also lowering the DA costs as a result.
And I'm going to take a crack at explaining this to the audience, and I want you to jump in here if this doesn't make any sense. Is there's different segments of modular blockchain. You can start to break them apart from settlement layer to data availability layer to the actual like transaction / execution processing. So what you guys are attempting to do is saying, hey, the execution processing is much faster on Solana. So instead of like using Ethereum's what do you call it, execution layer, we're going to use Solana's, because now we can process so many more transactions. Is that essentially what's going on?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, perfect. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Bitcoin aspect of this, because I know you're doing it for Ethereum, and then Max, you're doing it for Bitcoin. Talk to us a little bit about like some of the, because we've had people on here from Bob, we've had people from BitLayer, we've had people from building on native Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. They're just like, building on Bitcoin is hard. So talk to us a little bit about that process.
Yeah. Bitcoin is really, really hard. So yeah, like Ethereum, because Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, right? So there is Bitcoin script, but it's not nearly as powerful. So it's not Turing complete. You cannot like write ZKP, ZK verification code, and so on. So this is requires a lot of research to settle on Bitcoin. But in general, the idea is the same. So we have Bitcoin, like the oldest chain, like the most fundamental one, the one that is very well known by people even even outside of crypto, so like not Web3 degens, but just people who invest in something, and just everyone knows about Bitcoin. And that's why we decided basically to combine the chain that has a ton of liquidity, and this liquidity is just sitting idle on chain. Like there is no way to do anything meaningful with your Bitcoins on L1, to be honest. And the idea was to combine this liquidity with the best execution layer with SVM. So and the projects that you mentioned, essentially they are doing more or less the same, but they are using EVM. And well, it's frankly speaking, it's easier to do it with EVM because there is a number of stacks that exist for building EVM L2s. And but we decided to chase SVM, to chase speed and great community of builders, which is also super important, I think, for any chain.
Talk to us a little bit about some of the developer tooling, because we actually have DevRel from the Solana Foundation coming on later this week, so I'll ask them as well. Talk to us a little bit about like how you guys have found building with the SVM in, I guess we'll call it non-native environments.
Actually, the experience is great, as Solana tooling is built in a way that you can switch basically your RPC, point it, make it point on your network instead of Solana mainnet, and things just work. So engineering quality is there. It's another question is that you have to rebuild some of the infrastructure that is not Solana itself, but like a lot of products built on SVM rely on like indexers, like some specific on-chain programs like Orderbook, OpenBook, and so on. So you have to take care of this part. But when it comes to Solana itself, the experience is really good.
Yeah, same. I think on the developer tooling, maybe like 2 years ago, you asked Solana builders, they would say they're chewing glass, right? That's the common expression. But now we have Anchor, now we have Tape Link, existing primitives that helps onboard these new developers that knows Rust. So my team actually came from a lot of Polkadot, near Cosmos ecosystem, where I code like kind of the debt ecosystem and the large L1 Rust-based L1s. So so based on our own experience, we kind of help build a common library of Solana programs. But the tooling itself has been pretty easy to pick up. And we also, kind of similar to what Max is saying, build our own infrastructure from a chain perspective. So we actually onboarded April. That's one of our ecosystem partners. They're a Bitcoin first. Now it's on EVM. Now it's on SVM through us, a Oracle service provider. And instead of going to like the typical Pith or other Solana Oracle services, we ended up co-working with them, co-building the app to get them onto SVM and actually use them as our service provider. So that's, to me, that's like the network extension, right? We talked about this earlier. You can build these, you can bring these new builders from other ecosystem, and actually builders from even outside of crypto at all to come into SVM to get them to build new applications.
Yeah, it was funny. We actually we interviewed Pith. This must have been like 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about how they run on essentially a fork of Ethereum, because when they first started, they would have been taking up 100% of the block space of. I'm sorry, a fork of Solana, when they were to be essentially taking up 100% of the block space. Now, for these larger apps like a Pith, do you feel like app chains, or do you feel like these Solana network extensions, like that's the future for them? Like, let's say another Pith comes around, where do you think they all end up building?
That's a great question. Yeah, so usually for DeFi applications, they probably do need the composability. So they would want to stay on the general purpose chain, right? Where, everything is very interconnected, and you can, quickly, jump from a lending protocol to like swapping and to, staking, right? All in kind of couple of clicks without any kind of liquidity degradation. But when it comes to things like we're talking to like a PayFi company, right? For instance, they want to add KYC infrastructure on the chain, right? So that's something as a public chain you would never ask, like mandate your users to use KYC. So that's a perfect example that there needs to be some sort of customization. We're also talking to, as I mentioned, like decentralized AI companies, a lot of inbounds on that, where they felt they were bottlenecked by the EVM tech stack. And certainly they already have a distribution network working with data providers or inference model providers, etc. So they don't necessarily need to be, essentially put in the same chain as the rest of the general purpose chain apps. Yeah, so I think the example you gave was very good too. Like with Pith, they need very very customized throughput, even faster than Solana mainnet itself. So yeah, when these type of customization arises, that's when we see the app chain use case.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then one thing, I think you mentioned this earlier, is you guys are creating interoperability with Ton. I believe
Yeah,
Ton uses the Funk programming language, which is, I've heard, not
exactly.
the best.
Yep, yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't realize this at first. We kind of almost pivoted into this direction while we were talking to a lot of DeFi application builders. So they find it difficult to deploy on Ton, even though they're very bullish about it. So by now building this first phase of the interoperability, we call Intersoon. So we have Asset Bridge. That's the first between Solana and Ton, live currently on our DevNet, soon to be Testnet. And I'm sorry, this is just between the Solana and Ton, so on the mainnet, on the two mainnet. And then the next phase will be the cross-chain messaging protocol, right? That links everything when we go mainnet launch. So that would be the next phase, native interop that we aspire to embed into our synchroncer, so that goes very natively into the entire Soon chain universe, as well as the two L1s that we think has the most user adoption.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's. I was very excited about Ton, and I remember interviewing some Ton projects, and they were telling me just Funk is really difficult, and they started building like I almost call it like a transpiling language, where it's like, hey, you could write in some higher order language that will then transpile down
Right.
into
Right.
into Funk. But Max, talk to us a little bit about how you guys are attracting developers themselves. Is it similar to what Joanna's talking about? Is that you can kind of take developers from other chains and be like, hey, here's this new paradigm. It's easy to build on Bitcoin now.
Yeah, I guess we can use like very, very different sources of new developers. So for us, so far it was mostly developers who are Solana, like their original project is on Solana, but they also started exploring other alt SVM chains already, and yeah, so they are interested in they want to be deployed like on as many chains as possible. It's like also true on in the EVM world, right? So we see, so once you build like your program, it requires very like small effort from your side to redeploy it to some other chain that is also compatible. So for us, it was mostly SVM developers. We haven't like converted anyone into SVM, but I really like Joanna's strategy, like Soon's strategy, so that you can approach non-SVM devs and just guide them through like how to migrate to SVM, and yeah. So
Well, I'm excited to read some of those guides myself, because I've been diving more into the Solana ecosystem, and SVM is something I'm quite interested in. Talk to the audience about where they can find your guys' respective projects, anything you want to shout out that they should look into.
Yeah, I guess for us it's pretty easy. Just Twitter soon SON_SVM. That's our Twitter handle, and we're currently running our Genesis hackathon. Something that please, as the audience continue to explore with our DevNet. It's something that I would love to see more. Genuinely interesting use case to come up. And the other thing is we are going to be at DEF CON. We have our event on the 13th, something that you can find the invite Luma page on our official Twitter. And I guess lastly, just we're about to launch our testnet, so we're about to also come up with a lot of new user-facing applications that we might start looking into, like doing user incentives on. So yeah, just stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. Well, builders, go get involved with that. And then Max?
So the best way to connect is probably find us on Twitter as YONA, YONA. Twitter side, like Discord, all the standard communication channels. Yeah, so we'll be on some events on DEF CON, so happy to meet in person too. And yeah, stay tuned. Some announcements are to be made.
Absolutely. Well, everyone go follow the Twitters, go get involved with those of the companies. I'm very bullish on the SVM space, and I'm excited to play around with it myself. So everyone, let's continue building the future of Web3.